Hi, Paul.
Hi. Well, now I can see you.
You should be able to see me any second now. Hold on. Here I am. How are you?
I'm
Thank you.
great. Oh, I like that we're both wearing our brights today.
That's right. And actually, that's my favorite kind of blue.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, my wife has a different name for it. She calls it periwinkle blue. At least she did when we were dating many moons ago. I call it royal blue. Mostly it because of my fraternity has royal blue and white. So um, those are my reasonings. But it is my favorite color, blue, for real.
Yeah, and I think I was looking up some trends in coloring for resumes, and one of the hot
Uh-huh.
colors this year is the color you're wearing.
Is that
Not,
right?
yeah, not as a resume color, but more as like an accent.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. All right. That's interesting. So,
Mhm.
are you finding more people are open to using color these days?
That's definitely the way I sway no matter what. So
Okay.
I love the use of color. I like the use of graphics. I know some resume
Mhm.
writers don't, and that's great. But for me, most of the clients that come to me are because they like that kind of a resume that's a little bit more graphic rich. So it's pretty rare that I don't use color.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
want to
I
try to
think
get my yeah.
well, I was going to say that once upon a time, graphics was ATS adverse, and it's much more forgiving now. But there seems to be still this discussion, graphics versus anti-graphics, and you know,
Right.
what do you say? Yeah, I used to write resumes. I don't anymore. I dissolved my resume company. Um, but I remember the argument was just continual, depending upon who you were with and who you hung out with. There were the anti-colors, and there were those who did. And it's interesting, people who were very conservative didn't even like a little dash of blue or their lines, as opposed to young people going, yeah.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yes,
And how
so
it can help you stand out, just with a
exactly.
little bit and very like it can still be professional and cool looking. And I like to incorporate some cool logos sometimes, but that's not right for
Hmm.
everybody. There's
Right.
some industries that where that doesn't make sense, or some personality types where that doesn't make sense. So I'm
It's a
I'm very
it's a
conscious
taste
of that,
thing.
but mhm,
Yeah, it's a taste thing
mhm,
for sure. I just feel that a little color doesn't hurt. It does help to stand
mhm,
out. It also makes you a little bit memorable when a lot of people are sending dull documents along with
mhm.
as most people tend to do. So
Right.
you know,
So
but
it's going to be
have
Jack today. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Jack. Yeah, no, yeah, Jack is going to be here any minute. He usually joins me a little early, depending upon his meeting schedule. So we are live now. There are people
Okay.
hearing us talk, which is cool.
Good
I
to know.
like the engagement. And sometimes people comment. And by the way, if you are listening to Paul and I talk, Paul is going to be our special guest today. Go ahead and say hi to Paula. Let us know where you're from. Say hi to Jack as well, as he's going to be here in a few minutes. I haven't heard anything that contradicts that. So we'll be starting here in about 10 minutes. So, enjoy our little chat as we go along. But say hi, put your questions in, and we'll be with you and we'll answer questions during the show. So yeah, so this cover story thing, when you do lives, it shows on the cover of your profile, which is pretty cool. I think there's some people who are adverse to it because they're afraid people will mess up. You just gave the same excuse that you would for having a LinkedIn profile. We're afraid to mess up. So I don't know. That's an argument for someone else. I think it helps you stand out if you can use it. And of course, when it's available for everybody,
Mhm.
that would be a beautiful thing.
I think it's interesting to think about just the wave of the future with the video and how that's becoming
Yeah.
so much more important. Over LinkedIn yesterday, there was a cover letter post, and then a
Mhm.
gentleman in there, he suggested doing a video cover letter. And I asked him if he
Mhm.
could send it to me, and he did. And it was really interesting. It linked to a YouTube, and it was maybe
Mm.
3 to 4 minutes long. In my opinion, maybe just a bit too long. But
Okay.
he gave a nice pitch basically of why, and he said it did help him land the job. And I think it's really interesting. Is that the wave of the future? Is that where this is all going? How are people who are over a certain age or not as good at not as savvy on computers, how are they going to handle that? I mean, it's just, there's so many questions around it. It's so interesting.
Well, I think as somebody who is 60 years old, myself, I think they'll be fine. And I say that because it's a matter of presentation. Now, in my situation, this is what I do. I play with stuff, I do stuff, but to me, it's about getting the content out there. And the more avenues you can get content out to stand out, I think that is the key to getting noticed. And you'll find some who will be repelled, but of course, that will be also a catalyst for a reason to do it, to attract those who you want to attract. And if
Mhm.
you're in an industry where or you do things like training or teaching, you want to be able to show that you can do it, and that you'd be able to be effective at it no matter what the technology is. So I
Mhm.
do think that does separate the weeds from the chaff, so to speak.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a really good chance to kind of, especially if you're in certain fields where that's important, to get in front of customers, those customer facing positions, or like you said, training, other avenues where that's going to be part of your job, to be maybe in front
Hmm.
of the public or customers or your teams within your organization. So what a great way to show that you can handle that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
I think too that if you have the right setup, you can really show that that could even extend to giving virtual speeches, or showing that you're an asset. Here's Jack.
Mhm.
Hey, hey, good
Hey,
Hey, Jack.
hey,
afternoon.
this is Paula. How you doing?
Hey, Paula.
Nice to
How
meet
are
you,
you?
Jack.
Nice to meet you.
Jack. Not that we always comment on the aesthetics, but did you shave?
I did. You know what? I was tired of the beard and the mustache, and it's spring, even though it doesn't look like that outside. It's like, I don't know where it is by you guys, but I'm looking outside now. It's like rainy and cold.
Oh, it's gorgeous here in Chicago.
Yeah.
You're in Wisconsin, Paula,
Seriously, are
aren't
you
you?
being
Yes.
sarcastic or?
Yeah, she's in Wisconsin.
I'm in Green Bay,
Hey,
Wisconsin, and it is gorgeous here as well.
all right, so I'll shut up because like it's way colder in Wisconsin than here. So I have
Mhm.
to complain that I'll stop.
Well, and as long as
Yeah.
the sun's out, right?
No, it's not. It's been rainy and ugh. I'm just so over this pandemic.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I think in July they're talking about everything being no restrictions opening up here in Chicago.
Really?
So, yeah, but I gotta say, despite what people think about the mayors and the governors here, they did their due diligence, and there are times they pulled back the reins, and they're following the numbers, which is probably the best indicators of all of that.
Yeah.
If you're not one who has been poo-pooing all of this throughout time, but yeah, people are really getting the shots, talking about it, getting it done. So I feel all right about it. So I think
Yeah.
it's kind of cool.
I didn't get vaccinated yet. Did you guys?
I'm
I
done.
did. Me too.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm done.
Are they?
I did. I did the Moderna.
Yeah. Any side effects?
Zero, as opposed to my wife had like 2 days worth of side
Yeah.
effects. And I think, I didn't have any. I mean, it was just a pinch and I was done. I hadn't thought about it since,
Yeah.
as far as my health is concerned, anyway.
I had the
So
Pfizer, so I had zero, like Mark Anthony, the first one, no side effects at all. The second one, I had a sore arm, and that was it.
Really? Oh, that's good. Cool.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple kids who had COVID, and they this week got their first vaccination. So they're older; they're in high school, and they both had some side effects. I was kind of surprised by it. I just kind of thought, they're kids and they'll roll with the punches. But my middle kid, he's pretty tough, and he had side effects. He had a fever last night, and I guess I was expecting him to just roll through it because he's 18.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that, and I think that is a surprise because we at one point thought that they were invincible.
Yeah.
So there you go. I think, and they reported here in Chicago as well that there were teens who had previous respiratory problems, that they experienced some challenges. So. Very interesting time.
Yeah, I gotta get. You know what? It's so interesting because, like in New Jersey, they had like such a hierarchy of who gets it first, and I had no interest in cutting the line, being like, "Oh, I got to go in here because I have," and whatever, make something up to get in line. So I'm waiting, and then it was hard to get. You know what I mean? It was like, but now it looks like it's now it's easier. So I guess I should kind of look into it.
Yeah, it's pretty easy now. It's open to everybody, just about. As young as 12 years old.
Is that young? I don't know. You really like 12? That seems kind of young, no?
Yeah. According to the science that we have available at the moment, they said they could be carriers if they're unaffected physically. So again, we have enough evidence that everybody would be better off doing the vaccine than not.
Yeah, you gotta start thinking about they can have like mandates in the office, vaccine passports to go places. Yeah,
that's going to be interesting. That's going to be interesting to say the least. There's so many dynamics to this. It's almost more tiring than talking about the vaccine itself.
But for me, it's good. It gives me stuff to write about, Mark. So it's
yes, I know, right? You love the drama, and I do.
There's some stuff to write. Otherwise, what about then it makes it easier to like, okay, like for today, Goldman Sachs from the office.
Yeah,
I got a topic. Boom, I could get to it. Got something to do.
What I'll really be interested in seeing the jobs report. I think is it Friday that'll be out. We'll have to add that to our agenda for next week. This should be very interesting because of all the people who are turning down jobs because their unemployment is plentiful for the moment. I still think it's a bad idea for people to turn down jobs. And if you're listening, you don't agree with me, you can put that in the chat if you want. But fight me. But I just really feel like this is a golden opportunity to make it a bridge job at least, as opposed to riding out the unemployment, because something could turn left here in a little bit. So just can't be too careful.
It's so funny how some of these things, like. It's so easy for people to get into these kind of conversations. I stopped for breakfast this morning, and I saw somebody who doing the supers for the office building I worked at, and out of nowhere they're just saying, these people are collecting unemployment when they should be working, and this is so. It's such a topic that that this whole thing that everybody has an opinion on, and then it gets all political. In terms of what's wrong with them? They don't want to work.
Yeah, everything seems to be a political conversation these days. I don't know I hope we go back to Dungeons and Dragons. It'll be a lot easier. Yeah. So let's go ahead and start the show. And Job Seeker Nation, welcome. What's up with you guys? How are you? Thanks for joining us here. We're here every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. For those of us who are in the Midwest, 12 o'clock, and you can do the math from there. Jack, you can join Jack at recruiter.io and follow his LinkedIn profile. You can also follow me at thevoiceofjobseekers.com and my LinkedIn profile. We definitely want you to follow our guest, Paula Christensen, who is a certified resume writer and interview coach. She worked one-on-one with clients to get them noticed. And she's also an HR recruiter. Jack, did you know that?
No, I didn't, Paula.
A former HR recruiter. So yeah, I used to be a recruiter back in a former life.
So you recruited for HR people, or you?
I'm sorry. I recruited for a large company here in Green Bay. And then I took some time to raise my kids. I was a stay-at-home parent for a while, and then I re-entered the workforce, kind of in a weird job that wasn't quite right, but helped get me back in, that bridge job. And then I became a career coach.
That's awesome.
And started my own business 6 years ago.
I guess from being in HR, I really get a vibe of like what, how people get hired, why they don't get hired, what they have to do to get hired. Probably immersed you in that. So I imagine it made it easy to make that transition, huh?
Exactly. And I absolutely loved it. One of the things I loved the most about my job was actually going to the mock interview sessions with the local colleges. So it's just something we did as a company, as goodwill, and they would send a couple of us there every year. And I loved it. And everyone else on my team hated it. They didn't love doing that. And I signed up every year, and I really loved it because I felt like I was helping. So it was a really natural extension.
Did those kids know how to kind of sell themselves and market themselves and have a pitch, or not really? Not really. Yeah.
I mean, everybody's different. Some of us grew up with like role models who kind of helped us with that, or parents or a sister or brother who kind of told us the right way to do things. But being a recruiter, I don't know how you feel about that, Jack, but sometimes being on the other side where you just think, this person could just need a little bit of help. And I think the really good recruiters and interviewers can maybe see through some of those blunders, but people who aren't so great at it or are new as a recruiter themselves sometimes can't make that jump of somebody who just maybe wasn't prepared or had an error on their resume or didn't speak very eloquently. So I find that with college students, sometimes they didn't have people helping them along the way. And so they were really receptive for the feedback that I would give at those mock interview sessions.
I mention this to you, Mark, that like usually every summer I would have, college kids come in and paid interns in the office. And Paula, it just struck me as so odd that these kids going to private schools paying 30, 40, 50,000 a year plus, and nobody at the schools taught them like how to write a resume, how to have an interview. Pre-COVID, how to just like, shake someone's hand, look them in the eyes, you know what I mean? Have some small talk. And like, that's insane that they didn't put some resources into training these kids how to do it. And then they're going to just throw them out into the deep end of the pool. It's bizarre.
Well, Jack, let's see, it was less than a year ago, probably in the fall. There were myself and a bunch of other career professionals had this discussion as to why aren't career services out in front providing resources and links and information and videos and audios and podcasts and whatever they can to help people, their students who mostly will follow them, to help them get ahead in their transition to being professionals. I mean, last year I was looking at some of the college places and even employment offices that supposedly are available for help and all this. You hear zero from them on any of the social channels, except maybe Facebook, where they will post something once a week there, and where people were really needing desperate help. And I really had a problem with that. There were some exceptions, like the Career Stop is an exception. In fact, they've been exceptional. If you look on their Twitter feed in the different states, that really kicked it in high gear, as opposed to some of the other ones, and I can't think of their names at the moment because they were very silent. So yeah, I do have some very strong opinions, and probably would get hate mail if I told them publicly again.
Again.
Yeah,
I think it's
I did not hold back at all. I was like, how could that be? If you're promoting employment and you provide resources, where are the resources?
It's kind of
They all can't be in a
too.
library.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's also goes to ownership as well. I think well, a couple different things that came to mind when you were talking about that. One is that I do believe there's a new wave. I think there's new people who are some really amazing people, some of them whom I'm connected with on LinkedIn, who are getting into these colleges and kind of shaking up the way they've done it. I also do think some of the onus of that is on the students. So I have a college student. I know Jack does. I think maybe, did he go to his career office? I'm not sure how much he took advantage of their services that they offer there. Maybe it's a little different because he has a mother who's in the industry, but I mean, I don't know, like some of that is, are the students actually taking the steps to go and utilize those resources?
And probably not. Having said that, is that what kind of presence are you? You've got to still sell it to the students. I've talked to career professionals who really just, they take, and I talked to a couple of them of some really huge universities, and they take the stand. They say, we teach them, and then they're on their own.
It's ridiculous.
And that's and I find it
ridiculous. You paid us. Goodbye. We're done with you. Thanks for giving me $200,000. Good luck.
Right, you paid you $80,000, and you're happy with the 10% of students maybe that came to your office and used your resources. You're really happy with that, and that burst my ball. But they fought me tooth and nail on this one thread in Facebook that yes, we do this and we do that, but really it's on their own. So it doesn't matter whether they get a job or not. You're happy with the job you're doing, and they were very bold in saying yes. And it's like I find it crazy. Now, every once in a while, I have a graduate. I have my oldest son is a graduate, MBA graduate. He's doing a second master's.
Awesome.
But he didn't need career services. He went and networked his way. I think I told you, Jack, he networked his way to 13 jobs in college. That includes 4 internships.
Wow.
And all of it was through networking. And he controlled his own destiny, and he did that on his own. I didn't have to prompt him to do anything unless he was reading my articles. That's the only thing. That's the only thing. And he would ask, and he would ask me questions every once in a while. But other than that, he was pretty, stable in that area, as opposed to some of his friends. And that wasn't a cheap university that they went to. Some of his friends, they were just waiting for stuff to happen, which a lot of college students tend to do.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the time.
So, this is
season.
Yeah, this is the time, and it's going to depend on industries. We talked about this last week about how there's some industries that are just more open to hiring than others, like Target here in Chicago. They're hiring at $18 an hour.
Wow.
$18 an hour. You don't even have to have a college degree to get $18 an hour. That's not bad at all. Now, it didn't say whether those were full-time positions or part-time positions. Either way, that's a win if you're looking for part-time, especially. But other than that, I think, people have to, parents should be demanding a little bit more from their career services, especially if they were silent and non-proactive during this pandemic. That's going to be an interesting discussion here in the future, I think. I really think so. Yeah.
I also think
go ahead.
Meeting those students where they're at. I think Jack kind of alluded to this, but are you doing the things that students want to? Are you the avenues? So are you on YouTube? Do you have a podcast? Are you doing things where you're attracting the students versus the old way it's always been done?
Yeah. instead of teaching them how to use resume paper. But we can get into that discussion.
See, we should talk about this now because this is a good business opportunity, I think, to really
I think it
rejuvenate
is.
the whole career center at these schools. To make it cool, fun, and make it like almost a party, especially post COVID. But maybe we'll talk about it. We don't give it away.
Riley. But I think you're absolutely right. There's some student centers that I've talked to that actually they have done everything to meet where people are. They're talking about social media, how to meet others, meet recruiters, how to get their attention, put content out on the web as a way to show that maybe you have a clue. Using every avenue and using all these tools that we have now, almost to the point to where using anything that was done in 2009 obsolete.
Exactly. You could be like a TikTok recruiter. Be a TikTok college recruiter. Right? That could be kind of neat.
I'm sure there's some out there.
You know what? There are kind of recruiters who do use TikTok. There are. I know it's JT O'Donnell, who she's awesome. Yep. She has like a million followers. She's killing it.
She's got 1 million followers. Yes, my friend JT O'Donnell, who did it at the beginning. But you know what? She was smart. She had a lot of young people on her staff that and they keep their community very engaged. And that's how to, she has a perfect model on having a career service center on campus. So no wonder why she does what she's doing. She's been doing it for many years now.
Paula, would you be a career coach, career resume writer, TikToker, or?
I will never say never, but not right now.
Yeah. I guess you have to have the right dance to it as well, right?
Yeah, I think I need the data around that. I need to some thought, get it in there, maybe let it rummage around. But yeah, it's nothing I have considered up to now.
I think people who are doing it, I think the people who are doing it realize that TikTok has an algorithm that's like free and open. If people really like you, you're going to get seen, as opposed to LinkedIn. Now is so much involved there, and is very judiciously handed out. It's like we're playing cards. You only get 5. But a couple of years ago, LinkedIn was TikTok in a sense. That anybody can be seen by thousands of people.
It's everything now. If you think about it, right? Like you're saying with LinkedIn, all right, but the engagement in some of these other places is off the chart, and it does feel like a lot of things are moving. Look at Reddit. What happened just with the stock market? Out of nowhere, you had these Redditors who were like, buy AMC, buy GameStop, and boom, just went through the roof. Now they're doing it with, they're doing Bitcoin. Now they're doing it with Dogecoin, and it's a world now. Like, so my daughter turned me on to TikTok, and I got to tell you, I'm on it quite not often, but enough that I'm very familiar with it, and it's addicting. It's really wild, and they do, and like you have some things that are silly, but then some things very innovative. Some things that this is like you can't do this at another medium, but it really is effective and it gets your attention. So it's almost like you have to start thinking, do you go more on Reddit? Do you go more on TikTok? Do you go more on these other places that you didn't think of before, and be a trend center and then get an audience?
Yep. So let's narrow down our topic here. We did give a little primer here to what makes a effective job search. Ultimately, that is the question that we're kind of looking at. And JT was one of the was the link that I sent you guys to were her GMA answers. And I think people have to think of themselves more. Instead of presenting themselves as a thing, present themselves as an asset, and perhaps even an asset who's a personality. Paula, would you agree with that, or is there something else we're missing?
Absolutely. I think her in the Good Morning America segment, it talked a little bit more about like, okay, you're a commodity and you're not thinking about it as you're just an employee of this company. And I totally agree with that. You're in charge of your own career. And so that means if you work at a company where they don't give performance reviews, maybe you have to periodically ask your manager for a performance review. Maybe you have to take those steps to kind of go outside to get those skills on your own. Maybe your company wouldn't support paying for you to become Lean Sigma 6 certified, and you do that on your own. Yes, it's costly, but you're the commodity. And if you're thinking about your career, it's not the old days, like with my grandpa, where the company, they hired you and they helped you progress along with your career, and it was a very clear path. I mean, now we're in charge. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I think we are in charge, and we do have these opportunities that are available, unprecedented, because anybody could be a reporter, anybody could be a media company, anybody can be a broadcaster of some sort, as either their own experience, or they can broadcast what's going on in their industry very easily and perhaps reach a whole bunch of people and other employers. Jack, your thoughts regarding?
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm a proponent of, you have to just take control of your own career. And to me, it's not even a choice. I mean, the way things change so quickly, companies, in my opinion, for the most part, really don't care that much. They're more involved with what's in it for them, management, for the C-suite. How are they going to get their bonuses? How are they going to do really well financially? And not much interest. They have an interest as long as it helps them, but when it doesn't, then they don't care. So for somebody guiding their career, they have to think of themselves as a business and manage it that way. Everything in your power to kind of move it forward. Because if you're waiting for someone to knock on your door and give you an opportunity, it's pretty much not going to happen. So you have to kind of make your own breaks. You have to try things. You have to do whatever it takes to keep moving forward. And in a way, it's kind of almost uplifting, because then you realize, you know what? I don't have to put my fate in the hands of somebody else. It empowers me to feel that, you know what? I'm gonna be controlling my own destiny, my own future. I can make it happen. It's up to me. And if you think in those terms, it's kind of uplifting. You feel good about yourself because you say, hey, you know what? My manager's a jerk and they're not giving me promotions or raises or bonuses. You know what? I'll find someone else in another place that will. And I realize I hate my job and hate my career. All right, well, you know what? I gotta pivot and do something different. And that's going to happen throughout the rest of your career.
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead.
I would just like to add volunteer opportunities on top of that. So maybe you're not at the position where you can change jobs, or the opportunities aren't coming to you in your current job, but maybe there's a volunteer job out there. I'm working with a client right now who, he's in an entry-level position. He's a new grad. He wants to get into digital marketing. He doesn't have any experience. His degree's related to that, but now he's been out of the field for a year. And one of the things I suggested was either taking on some pro bono work or doing some volunteer, more structured activities where he could, gain those skills. Also meet some new people in the field. That would be helpful for those volunteer opportunities. So that's a untapped opportunity that a lot of people don't think of very often, is the volunteer work or the pro bono work.
Absolutely, especially in digital media, because you can kind of pretty much go to anybody, any small business even, and say, hey, small business owner, can I just do some marketing for you online to get some attention? And then you build up a body of work. Like in my town, you could literally probably go to the main street, go to each store, restaurant, shop. Hey, I'll do it for free. Let me show you what I can do. And then within a month, you could probably have this great body of work that a hiring manager, to get a real job, and say, look what I've done. And then if you could keep track of, like, okay, did this pizza place sell more pizza because of it? Then you could quantify it and say, hey, look, I went in 1 month, they went from selling X amount of pizzas to 10X or whatever. So that's a great idea for that. It's not like tomorrow, just do it. Go there, start knocking on doors.
Absolutely. And I think if you're not meeting a lot of people and you have a certain type of expertise that deserves a little exposure, we have these phones, which is a multimedia could be a multimedia campaign tool for you. You could do something as simple as going to somewhere where you're interested in that industry, talk to somebody locally or talk to someone over the phone, record the conversation, and let them know that you're going to share it with some people on LinkedIn who follow you who are also in that industry. Or maybe you won't want to broadcast it throughout LinkedIn. Maybe you want to broadcast it to that specialty group that you're a part of and make it available and let them comment and let them also add their, and you're also adding value to people that you're with. At the same time, you're letting people who are even following you as a recruiter or maybe even catch the attention of somebody as a recruiter to see that you are very into the industry, that you're asking good questions, and that you're reaching out in a way that is providing you intel for your job search. Another thing you could do is if you happen to get in on these clubhouses to where you're speaking or to anywhere where you're speaking, now these iPhones, and I don't know if it's available on Android, but you could take your iPhone and capture it just by using the screenshot or the screen share portion of it. And it documents you making comments, saying something intelligent, you providing value to the community at large. There's just so many creative ways that people can get in front of people now that you don't have to depend on the resume alone.
Right.
That you can go ahead and say, hey, I'm able to provide these things. These are the kind of discussions I'm having. This is my involvement, to at least get a conversation with somebody at minimum.
Mark, I don't know if you do this, and Paul, if you do this. This is going back to when we talk about TikTok with these new mediums in terms of that they're fast growing. And, I've been but here and there, not any purpose really. Have you, Paula? I did notice like there's a lot of career coaches, resume writers on there. Have you been popping on there? And
I missed the first part. Was it Clubhouse?
Yeah, have you?
I've done some. I'm not as active as some of my colleagues. I'm interested in, and everybody who has done it has been really, they've spoke favorable of how energizing it is to be in part of that discussion. So it's not about, getting your name out there. It's not necessarily about making connections even. It's about being part of that discussion, with people who are really going through the real problems of job seekers. So it's like being put in the middle of a room with a bunch of job seekers who immediately give you feedback. And that's really energizing for us, because sometimes as resume writers, we've kind of been off on the side, kind of in our own world, kind of doing our own thing. And we're not as close to the companies or the job seekers as maybe a recruiter might be. So I think it's really interesting to be in there and to get that feedback immediately on Clubhouse. That's what people are saying.
Yeah. Mark, have you been going on there?
I've gone a couple of times recently, and as far I haven't seen. I know all Clubhouse takes place on Wednesday. That's when it's a very busy day, and this show being one of them. There's one going on in Clubhouse as we speak. I think Annette Richmond does one at 12:30 on Wednesdays every Wednesday, as well as some other folks that we know that I would like to have on the show, but they're too busy doing Clubhouse. But ultimately, I think at first I think it is a great way if you're in the right rooms and with the right people for your job search. And that takes familiarity. It takes actually using LinkedIn kind of as a primer, because most of those people are on LinkedIn. They have their LinkedIn profiles right there on their profile setup. So I think, I believe that these are very useful if you're tactical and you're strategic. If you're going on listening to everybody else and you're not participating, I don't think you're not going to get as much out of it as opposed to if you're engaging or even a moderator for some of these rooms. If you're a moderator, then you can really add you can add ammo and value and those things that are needed to get seen and to show that you can do these things, and you get a chance to show your personality is something that your resume and your LinkedIn profile really can't do outside of what's written and what's posted. So yeah, anytime you get to show those are assets and not particularly just distractions.
How about you, Jack?
You know, so I'm trying to find the right room that makes sense. So I've kind of dabbled, going to different places. You know, as let's say putting on my recruiter hat, I haven't really seen rooms where it's kind of devoted to that kind of person. There could be, I just haven't seen it. You know what I mean? I have definitely seen more that, Paula, like rooms that you would make sense in. You know, that like you would have, you know, a topic about a resume. Like I think Virginia Franco have one Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday. I can't remember what days. You know, just
I think it's Tuesdays, something like that. Or
yeah,
Thursdays,
and another person, Anna Morgan, and her angels have, you know, a couple of different. They do it as well, and
on Facebook, they do theirs on Facebook.
Okay.
They do it also, but maybe they do across. You know, because I've been on their one of their Clubhouse shows. Maybe they do it cross-sectionally, or maybe they do it different places. So that seems, I don't fit into that mold. So that for me, you know what I mean? It's, you know, I'm there if like, when I show up, they just want to know, hey, what does a recruiter think? So I'm like a one-off. Like, all right. And then once I get my perspective, it's like, all right, we don't need you anymore. Thanks. Goodbye.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think you and I've talked about possibly doing a Clubhouse at some particular point.
Yeah.
I'm not rushing on there, but there was for the first month that I was on there, I was probably on there practically all the time, listening like I would talk radio. And had it on, and there a couple of times I was asked to participate. I said I didn't plan on participating, but
you're like, I was just hanging out listening.
But I think when you moderate or when you add to the discussion at large, that's when people start to follow you. If nobody knows you're there, you're just listening all of the time. Like if you've been on TikTok or Clubhouse and you're just listening and you wonder why you have 12 followers, that's your reason. You haven't said anything yet, and that's like most social networks. If you're not participating, if you're not engaging, if you're not adding value, you're not. You know, nobody's not looking for you to set the world on fire with one comment. That rarely happens. But I think the opportunities are being missed when you're just being a lurker.
So would you say, Paula, Mark, would you say it makes sense maybe for job seekers just to test the waters for these different places? You know, LinkedIn, clearly, you know, but then Facebook, Clubhouse, Twitter, Instagram, because I guess depending on what you do, what your job is, what your career is, but then also like what you feel comfortable with. You think it's time consuming? Do you think that would make sense for job seekers to just allocate time for each one and say, hey, I really feel comfortable with Clubhouse because I just like the audio part. I'm making this up. Maybe I'm introverted, so I don't want to, do these video Zoom calls. I feel more comfortable talking. And then you just spend your time trying to kind of network there. I mean, what do you guys think? Instead of just focusing on one place and that's it.
Go ahead, Paula.
I like the rounded picture.
Yeah.
So maybe not putting all your eggs in one basket. And yes, maybe you're going to use, it might depend a little bit on your industry or on your particular job. But I do think LinkedIn's really strong. But then maybe you go to these other avenues and find out some information, or it might be easier to connect with certain people in your industry on Clubhouse because it's pretty new. So just thinking about that rounded picture of you, if you're the commodity at your business and you're a business of one, thinking about, okay, how am I going to round out that picture? And maybe that's my skills, maybe that's my pitch, maybe that's who I connect with, and using all those avenues, I think would help. But I don't know about you should, like you mentioned it, of allotting a certain amount of time for each. I'm not sure about that. I mean, I definitely don't take that advice myself.
Yeah, and I think it does depend. I think if you already have a tribe, you go where the tribe is. If you're online and you participate elsewhere, if nobody's going there, then of course, then that's not going to appeal
Yeah.
to you unless you get a little bold and daring and knowing that you need to expand your network. You go on, fill out a profile, and you start watching and listening for a little bit. And then where you can add 2 or 3 cents, you'd be surprised what can often happen. They can expose you to a brand new wave of thinking or a new audience. But I don't think by sitting and waiting for a revelation to come is not going to be the answer. Of course, I think there's a lot of proactiveness in using the social networks and how they're going to be effective.
Do you
for
see
you
on
and how
Twitter
it's going to be used.
Do you see any traction on Twitter when it comes to like job seekers, like looking for resume writers and career coaches?
All the time.
I'm zero involved in Twitter.
Really?
So
Yeah, well.
you two should convince me why I should be. When I first started my business, I was on Twitter, to kind of learn and do a little bit, and I've almost done nothing with it since then. So what should I be doing on Twitter, and what
Mark,
should
you're
job
what?
seekers be doing on Twitter? I think I know the answer to that one, but
Well, Mark, you're right.
Well,
You're
I'm
kind
on
of close.
Twitter. I've been on Twitter for 12 years now. Since, well, actually 2008. I let my profile sit for about 3 years, a year. I let it sit before I start to get active, and then you get dragged into certain conversations. You realize that's not the place for you. You start to get away and find some other folks. But I actually have, since I write a lot, I used it to put my articles out there and some other things. And I got found by a bunch of folks and by a lot of people that you and I both know, Jack. I've known them for that long, back in the early days. And even before I had the voice of job seekers, people knew me from before that, as I was getting along. And I tried to jump in on conversations or just try to have casual conversations. It depended on the person, and I kind of read the room, so to speak, of conversations to see where I can add value. The sweet spot for me was being able to write and add articles and things like that, to the point to where what my articles became part of the topic of conversations and things that got shared and so forth. And it took time, like all of the other social networks, including LinkedIn. These things take time to get those sexy results, which I have never, ever really have gotten, that, Oprah read my tweet or anything like that. That's never happened. But I have, okay, arguable, but nevertheless, obviously she didn't pay that much attention. I'm the last to know if she did. But I think all in all, these things take time. And I think if you're just only giving it a year, you have to kind of be willing to be okay with radio silence for a year or two. To use, I think that includes writing. Writing and to have people actually say something back to you. It takes a while for most of us mere mortals to have people to say, hey, I love this, or I don't like it, and this is why. But the goal is to have a discussion. I didn't mind somebody saying they didn't like something. I didn't mind negative feedback. I didn't take it personally. But what I did do is I did, the times when it happened, turn into conversation. Eventually those turned into relationships, and they actually liked other things that I did. So, there's no magic elixir. It just takes the time that you're willing to give. You're not willing to give that time. You got a steady pipeline of clients, cool. Most of us, I don't do clients anymore, but most of us mere mortals, it takes a lot of work and using every avenue as possible to make things happen.
Yeah, Paul,
but for you, Jack.
Paul, when you were asking about why you should do it, the only thing I can say is this. So for me, it's weird because mostly like Mark, I'll post my Forbes article, and Twitter could get very heated and very ugly very quickly. So it's awkward for me. So I tend not to engage that much because it's so easy to get into this battle, and I don't want to I feel like in a way, if you're representing the brand, you don't want to be a jerk and be that guy who says something. So I feel a little, I'm being really honest, I feel a little hampered sometimes to do stuff. So I'm restrained. But I do notice that I follow like a lot of, like finance Twitter, startup Twitter, venture capital Twitter, and it has nothing to do with my recruiting. It's more just an interest. And I definitely see a lot of them saying that people find jobs that way. That a lot of people will find, seek out, hey, this company is really cool, and send a DM to one of the people who work there or senior executives there to get jobs. So I've seen enough people tweeting that it has to be a real thing, because it's not like the same person tweeting it over and over. Imagine some people do it that way. And then I also notice a lot of your cohorts are on there. So I imagine they're on there because they do get attention, because I do see a lot of them on there. And often they'll just kind of tell what they did. It's more of them telling their story a lot of like, hey, here's maybe talking about something with a resume, or talking about an interview technique and so on. So presumably that works. And I guess for job seekers, that's helpful too. If you really have to kind of, for a job seeker, then go back, Mark, to your initial question with job seekers. So you would really have to kind of look out for people who could kind of give you some good advice, guidance about resumes, about interview advice, about salary negotiations and things like that. And then maybe try to find people who are in positions to hire you.
Yeah, I think, and I'll even be more specific to add to my answer about Twitter. I've gotten speaking from there. I've got media from there. I mean, major media from there. I think I saw your articles at first on Twitter, and started to follow you and connect with you on LinkedIn. By the way, Paula, Jack took 4 or 5 months to respond to my connection requests on LinkedIn. Can you believe this guy?
Sorry,
I can't believe that.
I forgive you. We're cool, Jack, but but having said that, though, you've got to be willing to have the patience to do the due diligence. Like I said, 5 months it took me to connect with Jack. I didn't know at the time. I wasn't thinking about let's do some LinkedIn Lives. Actually, when that subject came about, he suggested that we do it together. I'm looking around. You're talking to me, but you just got to be patient and work it, and you got to be willing to also curate ideas and content and put them out there on top of someone else, like making comments on top of someone else's tweets or posts on LinkedIn. That's so effective, yet many users don't use that opportunity to say something and to get some attention. They think that because it didn't go viral, it's not useful, and that's not particularly true. It just takes one person to actually turn around particular ideas or want to expand on it ideas. And I've seen that too. I've gotten one time somebody actually had retweeted something that I had just said casually. And then next thing I know, I get a tweet saying that I love your blog. What? And that person actually is a funny story. And this happened about 2009. And this person turned around. They actually owned a fairly great business that actually got sold for millions from another company. So I'm not going to go into names or anything, but all that to say that you just never know. You just never know, and you have to try. And like I said, be comfortable with the radio silence, even if it's just for a couple of years. But you have to be that kind of person, to be that patient. And job search is patience.
Yeah, and as far as job search goes, I mean, on Twitter, I've heard that a lot of companies, that's where they'll put their announcement first for the job. It's just the easiest, the quickest, and then they might work to their other avenues. Like they have to do some more work to create a post for LinkedIn or create. So Twitter can sometimes be the first place that they will announce an opening. And so that's really great for job seekers to know, just to follow companies that they are interested in, because that might be the first that they hear about it is on Twitter.
Yeah, I really like the fact that you can search Twitter by hashtags even. And believe it or not, Twitter has the longest history of hashtags out of all the social networks.
Wow.
Hashtags was a thing because of Twitter.
Hmm.
LinkedIn just made it a thing in the past couple of years, but
Hmm.
Twitter has a long history. You could find hashtag responses from 2008, 2009 still.
Wow.
If you're willing to look. If you look up something like job search, you can find a very long history. And you can even search by using the right Twitter client. Like there's a Twitter client called Hootsuite, and
Hmm.
where you can use different columns. And I use it to do different types of research on different trending terms or different topics. And I also find clients to write for that way on Twitter. I found like 3 clients in the past year that I've written for at one time or another, just through Twitter, because somebody said, I'm looking for a writer who can, and I'm right there pitching, making my pitch. And I successfully was able to get it.
Hmm.
So, I may not be in the job market in that sense, but I do it to get clients for to write for. And
Hmm.
that is very useful for me. It's better. I think in that terms, I've also gotten clients through LinkedIn as well. But if you're strategic and purposeful, you can, and you're willing to try certain things. That search engine is almost as good as Google in a lot of ways.
Okay.
And you can even use Google to find Twitter and find different tweets, even if they were from the past. And we could talk about that another time. But I think all that, if you're using a lot of different venues, as we talk about making a job search effective, you'll be even more effective job seeker. If you're trying one way, like the spray and pray, you're spending time on the job boards. Not that job boards are a bad thing, but they're very limited because the possibilities are unlimited. And a lot of times they used to be the first place where an employer goes. Now it's not so much the first place. And in fact, if they're really trying to find somebody, they'll put it on the job board, knowing that the, possibly the percentage will hit the right person. So job seekers have to get out of the fact that you can only job search when it's time to job search. As I've always said, and Jack has heard me say dozens of times, job search is a lifestyle, and it's something that you have to work through and throughout and through multiple different ways.
I'd be
So
curious with both of you, Paul or Mark, what you guys think. I've been noticing this trend in that on the positive side of the equation, it seems that the job market is definitely heating up and getting way better. And I think it's going to keep getting, even more better, as more people get vaccines and states are opening up. But I see on the job seeker side, on the candidate side, more often than not, they want to have remote work, or if they can't get complete remote work, maybe 3 days at home, something of that nature. Whereas the companies, they talk a lot about remote work, but they kind of want to bring people back. And even if not 5 days a week, at least 4 days a week. And then it seems the job seekers, because it's hard to shake off that pandemic mindset. So they're looking for a big premium to move because we just went through a harrowing experience, and it's understandable. You wanted to switch jobs, but you have, in back of your mind, we just went through a year and change of just misery. So it's like, okay, if I'm going to move, who knows what'll happen? Maybe there could be another shoe to drop. I want to get at least a premium so that I don't feel stupid if something goes wrong. But the companies are still mired in the pandemic mindset, feeling we don't have to pay a lot to attract this talent. So for job seekers, it becomes this weird thing where you have a little bit that is good, but they're asking for a lot. The companies don't want to pay a lot. And they're also dragging their feet a little bit. And I can't blame them because, they look to India and Italy and other places and go, oh my gosh, look at the resurgence there. Could that happen maybe we should just let's wait and see. Let's see what happens in New York when they reopen, May, whatever it is. Let's wait till Chicago opens up. So for job seekers, it got to be very almost schizophrenic. Like, what the heck is really happening? Are you guys seeing things like that, or what are you seeing? In terms of the
Go ahead,
experience?
Paula. I'll let you ride out first.
I think it's really interesting. Some of the recruiters, I mean, I live in a pretty small town, but the recruiters and the companies that I'm talking to, the leaders, are saying really similar to what you're saying, Jack. They're like, we want our people back. I mean, not all of them, and I know they're willing to be flexible for some of them, but I think it's so interesting how some big companies are saying, nope, we're never going to bring people back. And that's creating this culture along with the pandemic, I guess, forced by the pandemic, where people were at home and got used to it and liked it. And I think it's going to be so interesting what that means for us going forward. I think it's going to be, I don't know the right word or phrase for it, but like the Industrial Revolution, but a new one.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
That's coming our way.
Oh, absolutely. There's a new wave. I don't know what it's kind of going to be, but I agree with you. Definitely something different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
See, here's something different. I'm going to do some homework. I want to write about this too. Is like I just saw something. So with Google, they look like they're doing something so brilliant. At the beginning, they were one of the first ones saying, "Okay, go home till September." Yeah. But while they were saying that, they were buying real estate. They were, rehabbing real estate. And I was just reading something where they're creating some of these offices to cater to Gen Z, the younger generation, and they're making everything cool. They always try to make the things cool, but even cooler than they have been, and make all sorts of kind of interesting collaborative spaces. So it feels the undercurrent, they're trying to make it better than being at home, so that the people who want to be remote, you know what, if I'm going to the office, it is kind of like being at home because I have like all the same kind of stuff and more. So that's kind of going to what you're saying, Paula, like this new thing. Is that going to be everywhere? Is that just going to be the big tech companies with the big budgets that could do it?
Right.
Yeah. I think we'll have to parse that out a little bit, Jack, because that's going to be a very interesting discussion for the future. And I have a lot to say about that. But I will say at this particular time, you brought up a very interesting point. At the end of the last recession, I don't know if you remember, but there was a certain sect of business owners who started to look towards the foreign countries that paid a lot less in salary, who had a lot less in minimum wage, to hire them to do, a lot of them did virtual assistant work. Mm-hmm. And I've been talking to a friend of mine who writes for Entrepreneur Magazine, and he says, yeah, there's somebody who says that's going to be the real future of work, and that might cause a chasm in the American job system, because they're looking to do a lot of work overseas as opposed to here, because there's not much of there's a very gray line dividing who can work where. At the same time, there are overseas businesses. Some people who live in Chicago, Wisconsin, New Jersey can work for a company in Dubai just as easy. I know a couple of people who do work for a foreign company in Dubai. And, of course, our system's a little bit different, and there's a little bit different setups, and there's all these tax considerations, all that here. But the tax considerations aren't over in some of the other countries. So, yeah, I do think that's going to make for a very interesting discussion as we go along in the next couple of years.
Mark, it's so prevalent from 2009, from the financial crisis. It hasn't stopped till now. And I'll give you some real life examples. So, not to go too inside baseball, but so like, what are the roles I'll look for? Which was kind of always an evergreen role. It'd be something called a guidelines monitoring role. Mm-hmm. So these big money management shops, asset management shops, you have people who would look at the trading to make sure that if, let's say, Paula, you invested your retirement money into the super safe mutual fund. This compliance person is going to look and make sure whatever investments are super safe. And if not, they're going to go, whoa, Mark, why, the portfolio manager, why did you buy this? You can't put it in here. Let's take it out. straightforward job.
Mm-hmm.
Find these people anymore because they moved them all to India.
Wow.
So like now when companies are saying, "Hey Jack, we need," and it shows like there's a disconnect sometimes with these companies and not knowing what's really happening on the boots on the ground. Like, okay, hey, we need the guidelines monitoring, and here's what we need, blah blah blah. It's like they're not there, and then they think, Jack, come on, what do you mean they're not there? And then I'll usually engage the conversation. Well, how long have you been looking? Oh, about 6 months. All right, so you're looking for 6 months. Don't you think 6 months, and let's say you're a brand name company, like a really good caught, and you have your own internal HR people like yourself doing all that work, you would kind of figure, all right, I would have come across somebody.
Right.
That's to me, that's a big issue. Also, if you ever have time and you look at some of the websites for a lot of these companies, you'll see, like it used to be some of these investment banks that I deal with, you would see first thing New York, New York, New York, New York for all the jobs. Now, different country, different country, different country, different country. New York, not even New York, Dallas, Salt Lake City, wherever, different country, different country, different country, different country. Mm-hmm. Somehow we don't talk about it, but that's a big challenge.
Well, I think we did have a sample size of, and this might be related or might not, but there was that that salsa company that made a commercial out of one time, and the guy had salsa and it says made in New York. And so how can good salsa be made in New York? And for years in this country, we said it's better if it's made in the USA, and we promoted that brand. We made a big deal of that brand. I think now if it says made in China, we go, oh, this is now perception quality. and there's a paradigm shift because unfortunately the money talks in this country, and that's what it comes down to. If you can jump through all the loopholes, and if you can find a way to make something out of nothing, you're considered a hero. And you're also considered the expert, and you're considered somebody that we want to follow. And yeah, I really do. It's going to be there's so many layers to this. We wouldn't be able to cover it.
This like new, because I don't know if you see this in your practice, Paula. So you get both extremes. So then you have young people who, like that example I gave, would be kind of an entry level-ish, couple years, 3, 4, or 5 years, job that you would do, and then you move on to something else. But if you don't get that job to get to the next level, plus I didn't bring this up before, but then you have people who are like late 30s, 40s, 50s, who then are earning a certain amount of money, and sometimes it's not ageism, but it's now they're in New York, they're in San Francisco, they're in LA, they're in Chicago, they're in Milwaukee, wherever, and they're earning a certain amount of money, and then the companies start weighing it, do I hire Paula as an HR person in Wisconsin, or do I go to Budapest? And I'm not exaggerating, do I go to Budapest, or wherever, and pay 25% of it? So you kind of get, on both ends, you get sunk a little bit.
I think the same way. There's two sides of the coin. So one side of the coin right now is like, oh my gosh, that's so hopeful. All the remote opportunities. I have this client right now that works in a really small town who's got amazing skills, and she's never been able to move out of that town because her husband and her family live there. Well, now she can apply for a job wherever because there's so many remote opportunities. That's amazing. That's so hopeful. But on the flip side, is everything you just said, your job might be taken away by someone else.
When they're doing that, those remote jobs, are they when they send the resumes, are these companies looking at them when it's remote?
It depends. She's very specific and has very specific skills. So not all of them are doing remote, but she's targeting the ones who are putting jobs remote only. Okay. So she knows that when she applies that it's a remote job.
Because I'm so curious how that's going to play. Like, again, that goes to what you were saying about this next wave of how it works. Are companies really going to adopt that way? Okay, I'm in New York, but I want to work in Wisconsin, and I can send my resume there, and vice versa. You can go from Wisconsin to New York. That's so interesting. See, you probably start finding it out with the resumes when they do it. Like you get these success stories.
Yeah, and just a lot of times we're incorporating bullet points. Resume writers are about working with remote teams or about their ability to manage remote teams. It's so much more important to point that out on a resume than it was like even 3 years ago.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so you take for granted now, like, yeah, you want to put that down there that you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I think that people will have a lot of choices, and they have to keep the ear to the ground to which is going to be the right choice for their industry, because it is industry driven. So we can't ever make a blanket statement and saying this is the way that you should look. However, we do say on this show quite often that if you're not involved in your industry, you won't be able to know when a pivot's being made. And having and as I'm a part of industry organizations, you hear things first months in advance before it actually takes place. Mm-hmm. Like in one of the organizations, there's the Career Thought Leaders Consortium. There's a career jam that's done every year in November. And in February, it's published on the site and people could download it and what have you. And you know, even today, even though it was talked about last November, there's some very relevant findings because there was a collective think tank that was involved where everybody had chipped in. There were different speakers, but everybody has a chance to contribute to that. So I know if that's my experience, I can imagine the compliance managers and compliance industry where you are, Jack. There are things that are foresaw months and maybe a couple of years before it happened. But if you don't know, if you're just now looking for a job because you got laid off and fired, you are months, and perhaps even virtual light years behind your industry, and it's going to be harder for you to catch up. And I think ultimately, as we talk about and somewhat wrap up our discussion on what makes an effective job search, we know we have enough data now to know those who are first and anticipate are going to always win. If you're using multiple strategies, you increase your chances of getting hired. If you're able to stand out in ways on social networks or whatever the case may be, and that you're original, that you're showing some forethought, people will look at you and maybe even want to refer you. So all those ideas, we're not just talking theory here. These things have happened. I saw in the last, even as a resume writer, during the last Great Recession, that people they found out that that they were laid off or something had happened, catastrophe, the industry disappeared, which it happens for those who if you remember Bear Stearns, but for some of them their company disappeared off the map all of a sudden, and they had no way to reach back and recoup that time. So I think job seekers have to kind of learn to gather intel, take it in, and pivot, and learn to pivot several times within a short period of time, so that they can keep traction and keep streams of income coming in, which is really often the bottom line. But I do want to read a couple of comments as we've gotten towards the end of the show. Michael says, how about New York cheddar versus Wisconsin cheddar? Thank you, Michael. He's always willing to chip in. We have a comment from Simone, who says that Leslie Garr, thank you for your great work. I could speak on this subject. And Leslie had made an earlier comment I didn't get a chance to get to. LinkedIn feels safer than other platforms. I've tried Facebook in the past. It's filled with toxicity. For a past job, I managed the Twitter account. Again, toxicity. I made sure not to, more than likely, make sure not to get involved in those kind of discussions. So Simone is the sweetest follower that we have at this show. Shout out to her. But I think it brings up a point here that sometimes it matters who your tribe is and who you're connecting with. I mean, I don't find toxicity. If you're just wide open on Twitter, you'll find toxicity if you look for it. But amongst the professionals that I connect with, like you guys and elsewhere, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn, it's made to be a safe environment. And we also challenge those who kind of want to kick in a little toxicity and unnecessary controversy, because we want to have production of topics and subjects and exchange of ideas, rather than for it to be just a debate or a yelling match. Sure, mine. So that is all the comments we have that I can highlight. We are at the top of the hour. Paula, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you both so much for having me. It's great. Always happy to discuss with you guys and get to know you better.
Where's the home that people should go to if they want to check you out?
LinkedIn. Yeah. Oh, business strategiccareercoaches.com. And you'll find me on LinkedIn. I try to put a lot of really helpful content out there. So Paula Christensen 1 on LinkedIn, and then strategiccareercoaches.com.
Awesome. And you know to find Jack at recruiter.io and follow his and follow mine. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back next Wednesday. My friend Lisa Lewis Miller is going to join us for a hot discussion. If you want to check out her podcast, Career Clarity Show, it's doing really well on the charts. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you guys. And thank you, Elaine Santiago, who said thank you very much. You guys have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks.